Hello, everybody. Welcome. 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 All right, there we go. Welcome, everybody. This is the second annual Lost in Translation, Stories of a Global Experience. Welcome, people, if you've been here before. But first, welcome again. If you're new to this, equally as welcome. We're not biased on our welcomes. We welcome all people here. Before we get started, I want to introduce John Roos from Roos Roast. You've been enjoying his coffee. Hopefully it's tasty. I know it is. He's going to give a quick word, and we're going to get started.
Thank you very much, Dan, and thanks to everyone, and thank you for Lost in Translation for bringing us out tonight. I just wanted to mention that the third Wednesday of every month in this space, there is another university event that has a lot of international students, and it's called Pecha Kucha Night. And it's 20 slides in 5 minutes and stories. And we also bring coffee that night too, and it's free. So I'd just like to invite everyone out to that third Wednesday of every month. And thanks a lot, Dan. I'm out of here. And thank you all.
Awesome. Give it a round for John. Nice coffee. Awesome. So first we'll go over a couple logistics. This is part of the International Career Pathways event series. It's sponsored by the School of Information, the School of Social Work, and the International Center. So give it up for them. They're wonderful people putting this on tonight. Got some interesting stories. This is also provided by Word of Mouth. It's a student organization. They do stories of different genres, not just abroad. So give it up for them. Yeah, they're wonderful people as well. Give it up for this room. This is a wonderful rectangular room. Very abstract. Feel like there should be the monolith from 2001 Space Odyssey somewhere. There is art. I see you guys chose not to sit very close. To me. They're very comfy chairs. They fit all sizes. Could fit any shape. I'm not sure if those are chairs or to hold your tea, or maybe musical instruments. I don't know. Or the beanbag balls. Very rose-shaped, wonderfully. But yeah, I don't know if you ever choose in. I don't know if you looked behind those chairs, but they're called human scale. Perfect for this event and for humans. If you ever decide to come up and get really intimate and close, they seem like very comfy chairs, if you would want to sit there. Or not. But yeah, it was a wonderful room to tell stories about being abroad, being on spaceships, work. So we have 7 great stories featured tonight from U of M students, faculty, and staff. We're going to go through about 3 stories, and then we will take a break. In between, we have the magical hat of impromptu stories that I think a lot of you have collaborated. I will be reading them in my tone of voice. Hopefully it'll be as realistic to your tone as I can be, but I'm very monotone, so sorry about that. All right. Well, let's just get right into it. We'll get started with our first storyteller, the wonderful Ariel Mallet. She's a double major here, a senior at U of M. You might know her because she's your friend. You might know her because you've seen her on the street. She has studied abroad, and she is here to tell you her story today. So give her a big round of applause, everyone, for Ariel.
Well, I'm going to tell you a story tonight about when I was 19, and I lived in this abandoned shack in the Andes of Ecuador for a couple of weeks on my own. Not quite on my own, I was with 3 other people, and we were working to build test latrines and assess previously built water systems in the Andes of Ecuador, a very remote village. And we had 2 different sites, one of which was at 10,000 feet in elevation, and the other was about 11,000 feet in elevation. So depending on what we were doing that day, we'd have to walk we'd have to trek, because we're in the Andes, between these 2 different sites. And one day, it was bright and early, like 7 a.m. I just gotten like 6 hours of sleep, but doing my translating thing. And I am hiking along, heading for our higher site to work on this latrine we're building. And I'm walking along talking to my friend Jake, and out of nowhere, this cow comes falling from the sky and almost squishes me, and I literally have to swan dive out of the way. And because you see, the way in which Ecuadorians keep their animals is they tether them to a wooden peg, and they move that peg around so that the animal can graze at different locations. And this cow had gotten tethered right on the edge of a small ledge, about 5 or 6 feet up, and had gotten all wrapped up in its rope, and I was just happened to be in the path of which the cow was falling, and had to get out of the way real fast. About 2 weeks later, I found myself in a situation in which I was bit by a potentially rabid dog, and this came about because I had made some local friends at this bar because I spoke Spanish and I was traveling alone and I was 19 and I needed some people to hang out with, right? And so one night we were hanging out on the beach at their bar, and I walked behind the bar to grab a lime for a shot of tequila I was going to do or something. And they had this dog that also liked to hang out behind the bar. And the dog decided I'd gotten a little too cozy, and he let me know by grabbing hold of my left ankle and giving me a nice big bite, which I have a really good scar still, but I've covered it classically with these tights so you can't see it. And my friends hear me yelp, and they come over, and the dog has let go of my leg at this point, and they take my shot of tequila and they pour it on my wound to disinfect it. I'm gonna take the lime, add some seasoning, just for good measure. And then they get me drunk on cheap Ecuadorian liquor to help deal with the shock and the pain that I'm in. And I wake up the next day, I don't think twice about it. I wrap a old, dirty cloth around my ankle, around my open wound, my 4 puncture wounds, and head on my way. And about a week later, I'm on a bus headed from Quito to the Amazon, to the edge of the Amazon, and it occurs to me that maybe, just maybe, I should have gone to a clinic, because rabies is a prevalent disease in Ecuador, and this dog, I did not know if it had been vaccinated or whatnot, but I was too busy dodging flying cows and getting bit by dogs to go to a clinic. So I continued on my way and ended up in the Amazon. And this is where the story really gets interesting. I know you're thinking that this is already a pretty interesting story, but it's about to get that much more interesting. So I end up in the Amazon, and it's about 10 o'clock at night, and I get off the bus, and it's raining, and I grab my pack and head off to my hostel, and I have to ask a local how to get there, because it's kind of like far from the bus stop. And I stay the night, and I wake up the next day, and you know, the sun's out, it's beautiful, I'm in the Amazon, there's just jungle as far as the eye can see, so I pack up my stuff, and I decide I'm going to spend the day trying to find Las Cascadas de San Rafael, which are some of the tallest waterfalls in South America, or at least Ecuador, or something of that variety. And so I pack up my belongings, I put my passport like securely stowed into my pack, and I lock my pack up into a locker of some kind, assuming that they will be safer there than they would be with me trekking through the Amazon. And I ask a local how to get to this trailhead to go see these waterfalls, and they point me to a bus, and so I hop on this bus, and an hour later the bus stops its final stop at this town, and so I get off the bus, and I ask someone else how to get to these waterfalls, and they point me onto another bus, and so I get onto this other bus, and I talk to the bus driver, and he knows what I'm talking about, and about an hour later, he drops me off at what appears to be a well-established bus stop. There's a paved road going down the hill, there's a cement bus shack, and so I hop off thinking that when it's time for me to go home back to my passport and my belongings, a bus will stop at this well-established bus stop, right? And so I hike down this path, and I meet this nice Ecuadorian family on the way, and we have lunch together at the waterfall, and we see the sights and have a nice conversation, and I decide it's time for me to head home. And so I hike back down the dirt path and up the paved road back to my well-established cement bus shack. And I stand there for an hour and a half, waiting. 3 buses pass me by. I wave all of them down. Not one of them stops. I'm 19, I'm alone, everything I own is in the locker at my hostel, including my passport. I think I have like $17 on me. No one knows exactly where I am because I emailed my mom the name of this town, but I'm like 2 hours away by bus in the Amazon. And I'm just sitting on a curb thinking, what am I going to do? How am I going to get myself out of this? And a truck pulls up and flashes his lights. And I walk around the side and I open the door, and I peer in, and there's this older gentleman, and someone who looks to be my age, turns out to be his nephew, inside, and they offer me a ride in Spanish. And, feeling kind of on top of the world because I survived the flying cow and the rabid dog, I think that, what's the worst that could happen? And so I hop in and I proceed to tell him this story about how I'd been living in Riobamba for 6 months and I was staying with a host family, and I made it sound as if there were people who were going to miss me in case they got any ideas about abandoning a body in the Amazon. And it turns out they were just very nice people, and they, given the older man did try to set me up with his nephew a few times, they just dropped me off exactly where I was headed, and I hopped into a different informal taxi and made it back to my hostel, and lived to tell you this tale today about a flying cow that almost squashed me in the Andes of Ecuador, a rabid dog that almost took my leg on the beach of Ecuador, and these two lovely gentlemen who picked me up while I was abandoned in the Amazon of Ecuador.
One more round for Ariel, everybody. One more time. Flying cow, took you up for safety, and then thank God for that guy. What a generous guy, and his nephew. All right, we're gonna change it up. We're gonna go through the mystery hats, the very stylish hats, holding all your stylish stories. Go with this one. Okay, translation, please. Linguistic mishaps and new norms are a key aspect of experience abroad. Tell us yours. I was in Korea. My friends and I went to a restaurant. The menu was in Korean, which we could not read. I could not read either. The waitress kept telling us to order in Korean. Of course, they wouldn't know. Well, we don't know. Using what little Korean I knew, I said, "Please wait for a moment," in Korean. The waitress then assumed I knew Korean. Oh no. And started speaking to me rapidly. I just nodded my head. Fortunately, we found an English menu. Oh man. That would be such a bummer if you couldn't eat pig and they gave you pig. Because you ordered it wrong in Korean. Assuming they don't eat pig. Okay, we're gonna keep this moving. Our next storyteller, she is a third generation storyteller. Please give a round of applause for Elizabeth James, everybody. Elizabeth James.
I see what you mean about these windows. Thank you. Good evening, everybody. I'm so happy to be here to be able to share a story that was my very first trip abroad. I had the passport in my hand. For the first time in my 40 years, I was about to leave the land that I was born in. I'm Native American, so for me this was a major step. I had traveled around most of North America, and I really, really enjoyed seeing all the land and the vast expanse of how beautiful our nation is, as well as Canada. But now, finally, I was going to cross the water. For me, I was overwhelmed, and I decided the best thing to do would be to go to the place of my ancestors in New Orleans, where my mother's family was from. I went there and asked their permission to travel from my family's land and go abroad and see what lied beyond on the other side of the water. As I took the trip, which ended up being a very long route to South Africa, over 24 hours, for some reason we went up through Amsterdam and came down through the entire continent. That was something to see, the little map moving on the airplane, showing you how you were moving down bit by bit, and it seemed like every 1,000 miles was about 10 hours, but finally we arrived. And strangely enough, when I landed, it felt very much like home. South Africa is a beautiful country filled with a lot of the same climate and areas that I had experienced traveling across the United States. The people were very warm and friendly, and I felt very much at peace as I traveled. However, I was still fearful about the work that I was going to do. I was working with an HIV prevention module that was created by one of my friends, my dear, I call her my sister, in our department. And so we got there and we realized that there might be a language barrier. As you see, South Africa has 11 national languages, and I wasn't sure which of the 11 I would be working with. So luckily for me, I was placed with something else that brought me very, very close in my spirit. I was working with a group of traditional healers. My grandmother had been a traditional healer in New Orleans, so I was very, very pleased to be working with these amazing women. I have to say I was the smallest of all of them. The ladies there are quite hefty. So I felt like the little sister of all of them. They took me under their wing, and between their broken English and my broken Zulu, we had a wonderful time discussing different herbs, things that we use for treatment. They gave me a lot of quizzes and tested me to make sure I knew what I was talking about, and was I the real deal, or was I some fakester who comes over and says, oh, I know what I'm doing, and really didn't. I guess I had proved my worth, because at the end of our trip, they decided to initiate me into their group, which was called the Madinkwe, the leopard ladies. I felt so honored. However, again, I was a little bit petrified because I wasn't sure what that initiation entailed. My grandmother, though she was a traditional healer and practiced Vodou, she was a vegetarian, so we had never had any meat or had any type of blood with the work that we had done at home. So, luckily for me, the ladies came with just a kind of a open gourd that was filled with some kind of frothy thing that I thought was a milkshake. Surprise, it was Zulu beer. I had never had beer in my life, but I don't drink. So I took one sip of this stuff and my head was kind of floating. I thought I was having some kind of spiritual experience, which I guess it was in a way. And after that, they invited me to dance. Well, I love to dance, I have to tell you that. I was on a dance show in Detroit when I was growing up. It was like the Detroit Soul Train, and I thought I was going to show them something. But I stopped and thought about it. I said, that would not be respectful of my ancestors. I've come all this way. I can't get up here and start doing something that might be very objectionable. So I decided instead to do a dance that my grandmother had taught me that was in honor of the water. Because all the while I've been thinking about how the water was separating us, these two great continents, and I said, I've got to do something that Grandmama would be proud of me doing. So I began to kind of sway back and forth and began to do a dance that I thought was pretty intricate. What was amazing to me and so moving was the fact that one by one, each of the ladies came to join me, and they were dancing. We were mirror reflections of one another. It was the same exact dance. And at that moment, rather than being lost in translation, I was found in translation. The dance brought us all together in a way that I could have never imagined or even dared to dream of. So with that, I tell you that the water was not the thing that separated us, but the very thing that connected us. And I have a picture over to show you the ladies and I, if you want to come during the break.
Keep it going for Elizabeth, everybody. Maybe try the Zulu water, not the Zulu beer.
Thank you, Elliot.
Okay, let's read another story from the hat. This has a bunch of senses, and we have circled feel, or this person has circled feel. Maybe other of you have circled feel too, but tell us a story about tell us your sensory story from abroad. During a visit to a game park for animals released from circuses. Just outside Durban, South Africa, I had the amazing experience of being kissed by a friendly elephant who stuck his trunk into our van.
I would have run if I could.
It's a very fast elephant. Maybe elephants run fast. Possibly, I don't know. Slopping and oh so sweet. Aw. What a nice sweet elephant. It's like my grandmother. Alright, this one is lost and found. Ever been literally or figuratively lost? Tell us about it. Yes. Coming to college and starting in a new place made me feel lost and confused. I felt like I lost track of who I was. That is me every day. We'll do one more, guys. This one is lost and found. Same type of story. Coming to U of M. Wow, people really don't feel at home at U of M. It's a scary place. Trying to figure out who I am, who I want to be, to reconstruct myself, to redefine myself, to be me. I am today, I believe. Yeah. Cool. We all are. Alright guys, moving on. Our third speaker. He is an associate professor at the School of Social Work. He is native of the country Chile. Guys, please give a warm welcome for Jorge Delva. Everybody, Jorge Delva.
Good evening. I'm delighted to be here to tell you this particular story. Many years ago, in the late 1990s, I took a postdoctoral fellowship at the Johns Hopkins University and had recently graduated with my degree in social work at the University of Hawaii. And I was hired to be part of the research team that included Hopkins researchers, representative from the Organization of American States, and researchers from Central America. I spoke Spanish. I'm originally from Chile. I focus on quantitative methods, so I fit this research team profile pretty well. And I was responsible for all tasks, any tasks involved in the development and implementation of this project. So one of my jobs consisted on hopping from countries to countries in Central America to meet with different government representatives to help build the support that each country would give to the project. So we had funding, but we needed the buy-in of the different countries. Oftentimes my meetings consisted with people from the, what we call it departments, but they call it ministries of health, Ministry of Education, and in one country it was the Ministry of Defense. So I'm going with my colleague, the research investigator, who's an MD, to what was a military installation. We drive in and it's just, it's soldiers walking around. We are taken into this office and this tall gentleman comes in, well dressed in his military uniform, and we're introduced to him. We begin talking about my colleague, about the project. And soon enough, this gentleman interrupts my colleagues and starts saying rhetorically, why are we working with the United States on this project? And by the way, why are you and your other MDs not in the community in the coastal part of the Atlantic Ocean attending to this community that had been destroyed by a recent storm? And I'm sitting there going, what am I doing here? I'm kind of like a kid, just recently got my PhD. My Spanish was that of a high school individual, because my university education was conducted in English in the United States. And so I'm sitting there going, I'm the wrong person for this job. To add to that feeling of being lost, when I arrived at that country and went through customs, when the colleagues that I was going to work with came to pick me up, after introducing ourselves, the first thing they tell me is, you are young. We expected someone older. Okay, it's me, you know. We expected someone with a beard. Okay, I was well shaved. And we expected an MD. It's like they expected everything, I was not. So that's when I'm stepping into this country, first time there, with a Spanish language skills that were that of a high school kid. And so I'm thinking, okay, this is the welcoming community. The larger context had to do with, I was in a country that a few decades earlier than when I had visited, had been involved in a brutal civil war, where the country itself was left-leaning countries, and it was a country where the United States had covertly, and sometimes not so covertly, supported the anti-government forces. So on top of that, I'm representing the United States. And I'm this sellout person that showed up with poor English, Spanish-speaking skills, who's not an MD, who knows very little about the social political history. So talk about feeling lost. I'm thinking, what am I doing here? Somebody get me out of here. How am I going to get this project to be successful? The people who are supposed to be my friends are questioning my identity. The general, as I used to think of this general, I don't know what his rank was, is questioning the whole country's enterprise with the United States. So what I learned from that experience, and it's something that's been reinforced as a result of travels that I've had subsequent to those trips, and to many, many countries, both for pleasure and for business, is that when you go to new places, if people notice or somehow you communicate to people that you made an attempt to learn their language, language is so key. When you communicate, you've made an attempt to learn a bit about their history, their social, political lifestyles, their costumes. When you travel with humility, when you are respectful in how you communicate with them, they forgive your mistakes, they forgive your ignorance, they forgive your actually lack of skills in handling yourself there. And you form these bonds that I form with people that can last an eternity. They're fantastic bonds in connecting with people that are just so different from you. And also personally, you grow as a human being. And that's my story.
Give one more time for Jorge, everybody. One more time. All right. We are about to go take a 15-minute break. Before, I'll read one more story from the hat, and then during the break, if you want to add to the hat pile, feel free to do so. Okay. So this one is lost and found. Ever been literally or felt figuratively lost? Tell us about it. I got lost my second day on campus. I went from the Diag to Northview to CC Little 3 times before I realized where I was. I was too embarrassed being a freshman. It is an embarrassing thing to ask anyone about it. You could have just said, I'm a senior and I'm lost. That's a little bit less embarrassing. Maybe not. Okay, everybody, feel free to do what you want during the break. We'll return shortly. All right. You guys are every middle school teacher's dream. Yes. Right away. We're starting class. All right, well, welcome back, guys. We're going to start off with a hat story. Okay, this is one of the sense stories, and this one is touch. Touch. The first time I experienced a fish span. was in a market in a foreign country. Certainly a sensory experience. Must have been a slimy fish. Okay. Alright, one more story. One more story from the hat. This one is lost and found. Okay. Ever been literally or figuratively lost? Tell us about it. I was 10 and I was at Disney World and I got lost in my imagination. Aww. What a cute kid. I've been lost ever since. Keep dreaming. You're great. Alright, guys. Our next storyteller coming to the stage, her name is Alyssa Mouton, like the crouton. But don't eat her. Please don't eat her. She's in Peace Corps, and she has been abroad. Welcome, Alyssa Mouton, everybody.
Well, hello everybody. I am actually not currently in Peace Corps. I'm a survivor, also known as a returned Peace Corps volunteer. So the story today I have for you is my West African love story that begins with me surrounded by approximately 100 goats. And the reason I'm surrounded by 100 goats is that I had chosen to spend 2 years in Mali, which is in West Africa, as a Peace Corps volunteer doing health education. And the second reason that I was surrounded by about 100 goats is that I was really lonely. So to explain a little bit, it was about a year into my service, and like any good volunteer, I learned the local language called Bambara. I had taken all the opportunities to get to know the local culture, to tell people about, United States culture, and let me tell you, it was exhausting. I was totally burnt out at a year end, and I really just wanted some company that didn't demand that I explain myself in a foreign language all the time. So, back to the goats. I'm in the compound, and in Mali, lots of the families had animals. Well, we're talking here sheep and cows and goats also, but they were for work or food. So when I asked the goat's owner to pick me out a goat that liked people, he gave me a little bit of a funny look, but he didn't hesitate very long. Went over to this young brown male goat and brought him over to where I was sitting and promptly sat him in my lap. And I think both the goat and I were a little startled. So he protested a little bit, but he quieted down and fell asleep in my lap. And that was the moment when I knew that this goat was coming home with me. So later, I named him Gabriel. And so the first thing is that most of the animals in my community don't have names. They're for work or food. So that was a little bit strange, my relationship with Gabriel in the community in the beginning. And then secondly, I subscribe more to the Caesar Milan dog whisperer kind of goat training method. And that is in stark contrast to my neighbors in the community who subscribe more to a brute force and terror methodology for getting animals to do what they want them to do. And it turns out that it wasn't difficult to get Ariel to do what I wanted him to do or follow me around because he imprinted on me. So for the first few weeks I had him, if you couldn't see my face, not just anybody, and I was pretty distinctive in the community as the only white person, so I probably wasn't hard to pick out. But if you couldn't see my face, he got increasingly agitated. Started out sounding something like, ah, and then, if I was around the corner, he couldn't see me, he would increase to more of, ah, ah, and around the corner and just yell at him and say, "Gabriel, shut up." And then he would immediately shut up. So our first 2 months together, living together in the community, were just fantastic. I really enjoyed his company, and it was my first time owning a goat, but we adjusted well to each other. And then, so about 2 months in, I was on the other side of the village speaking with the chief of the village about some of my work or something, and a child was sent across the village to get me and bring me back home. So I went home, and my neighbors were standing kind of in my yard. I didn't know what was going on, and I walked up to my yard, and Gabriel was laying there, and he was dead. And that, I just kind of fell apart. I started sobbing as my neighbors stood there in confusion. I'm not quite sure what they expected my reaction to be, but I'm sure that wasn't it. And then they asked me in the awkward silence, "Are you gonna go throw him in the field now?" And I shouted, "No!" And I took him across the street around the back of the hospital where there was kind of a field out of the way. And I grabbed a shovel from the storeroom, and in the over 100-degree heat, midday, hot season, I started digging a grave for my goat. And I would characterize this by, shoveling, sobbing, and sweating. And after a while, one of my neighbors, Sorrente, came to check on me, and she stood there with just this absolute look of confusion on her face. She had no idea why I was acting like this. But after a while, I could tell that she could sense that either she didn't get it, I had experienced a loss, and she took the shovel from me, and she started helping me dig this grave for my goat. So on that day, it was probably the worst day of my 2-year Peace Corps experience. It was absolutely full of sadness. But looking back, I also realized that it was a wildly unanticipated opportunity for cultural exchange about love and loss. So thanks, Gabriel. Thank you.
Give it up for Alyssa one more time, everyone. Thank you. All right, continue with the hat stories. This one is lost and found. Again, ever been literally or figuratively lost? In Bratislava, I fell asleep at an opera. Makes sense. And woke up at a bar. Ooh, beautiful. I was still in Bratislava, so that was cool. Eventually made it back to the hotel. Well, that is just a wonderful story. It's what I would want to happen to me. One more. This one is a sensory story, and it is feel. Fear, surreal. I was in China for a week during Hainai scare. Horny scare. Hurricane scare. Okay. It was my first time in the country. Stayed in a hotel for a week. Food was brought in. Temperatures taken.
People in hazmat suits.
There's a dog by people and some shirts. Okay. All right. Our next speaker coming up. She is a junior here at the University of Michigan. She's an English major. Everybody, give it up for Elliot Woodruff. Everybody, Elliot Woodruff.
So about a year ago, I realized that there was a disconnect between me and my education here at Michigan, and I needed it out. So I wake up one morning, it's about a year ago exactly, and I Google African volunteer programs, and I click on the first link that comes up and find that it's African Impact. And through them, I found an internship to teach English to 5th graders in Livingstone, Zambia. And so I decided to take the winter semester off, and I embarked on this 3-month journey to Zambia. And I really don't know too much about it going in, but I do know that I'm going to be teaching these kids, and they're going to be teaching me, and we're going to have fun and laugh and play. And my pictures will probably just look like the brochures, and it would be great. But I quickly realized that I would be housed on a lion conservation rehabilitation site in the middle of the Mosi-Otunya National Park. And it's about 20 kilometers from the town of Livingstone. So we're pretty secluded. It takes like roughly 30 minutes to get into town. And all my schools were the complete opposite in the villages. So I come here thinking that I'm going to have so many interactions with humans, but what I get is so many remarkable interactions with wildlife. One of the most terrifying ones was I came out of the shower one night to be face-to-face with a puff adder snake, which is the deadliest snake in Africa that will bite its victim twice before the victim will even know it's been bitten once. And there was a time when I took these books to school for the kids to read, and I opened them up, and there is a dead frog with the body on one cover and then all of its guts on the other. There were multiple traffic jams going to and from school because the elephant's favorite spot to play was in the street. I woke up from a nap one time with a 12-inch black centipede crawling across my stomach. I took showers every night with frogs. Every Tuesday was known as Donkey Chop, and we lived on this lion conservation site with about, I'd say like 36 lions ranging from like 6 weeks to 6 years old, and they had to eat, and so we would chop up these donkeys. So I would be responsible to chop up every Tuesday 4 donkeys. And so the first time I was wearing an all-white shirt, came back all red. But so the hardest thing was that we had to transport all of these dead donkey parts and into the truck. And so I would be sitting in the truck and we'd be going over these bumpy hills, and I'd have to avoid falling into the pit of blood. And I quickly learned to always sit upwind so that the smell would not come down. There was a time when it took 5 people to pry open the jaws of an 8-week-old lion cub, who had tried to devour my hand. And so just all of these encounters with like vervet monkeys who would come into our kitchen, and there's one time they stole a stick of butter and Tabasco sauce and ran away. And another time when I was sitting down outside to eat my meal, and one of the monkeys decided to sit on the branch above me and poop right onto my meal. And there were all these baboons that would just run around, and there's multiple times when I could not get to breakfast on time because it was just like it was so intimidating. But the most horrifying experience I had came within the first 12 hours that I was there. And I was there for 12 weeks, and so it's my first day, and it's dark out now, and we're in the main house. It's where all the volunteers get together for the meetings and meals, and we hang out and watch the same DVDs on this ancient TV. So my hut was located about a 2-minute walk from this main house, and so it's getting late. I'm pretty jet lagged, so I'm like, all right, everybody, I'm gonna go to bed. So we started to walk out, and they're like, no, you have to have a security guard. And I'm like, why do I need a security guard? And they're like, well, it's dark out. And I was like, okay, well, it's dark, which is true because we're 20 kilometers away from the town, and it's so dark that you can see the Milky Way, you can see the stars, and if there's not a full moon, it's just pitch black. So I'm like, okay, well, so I grab my flashlight, and I'm going. It's like, I don't need a security guard, it's just me walking back. Like, no, you need a security guard. So I run around back, and I get the security guard, whose name is Happy. And so I'm thinking in my head, all right, a security guard, like, I guess this is America, so we like guns and everything. No, all he has is just this flashlight, not much bigger than the one I have in my hand. And so I'm like, okay, well, don't really know why I need a guard, but, I guess a flashlight, we both have flashlights, maybe it'll be okay. But what I don't realize yet is that Zambia has the largest population in Africa of hippos. And last year alone, 300 people died from hippo attacks. And it's the end of the it's the beginning of the rainy season, and hippos like to come at night at dusk away from the river to feed on the vegetation. And so we're just walking along, I have no idea about these hippos yet, and this smell hits us, and it's just like foul, and it's like eggs, and it's just terrible. And Happy, and Happy like has his flashlight, and he just stops and goes, "Oh, hippos." And I'm like, "Hippos?" And he's like, "Yes, hippos." Okay, so we walk along for about 30 seconds, and he stops again. And he shines his flashlight ahead, and then to the left, and then to the right. And 10 feet from me is the biggest, ugliest hippo, mid-chew, with grass hanging out of its jaws, wincing from this artificial light being shined into his eyes, and I scream. And I just run, I bolt. I don't know where I'm going, it's pitch dark. My flashlight's on the ground, so I'm running, and I just like, it's my 12th hour in Africa, I have 12 more weeks, I have no idea what I'm doing, and I hear this noise coming from me, and I'm like, okay, well, that's the hippo, what do I do? And I was like, well, I'd rather not watch the hippo's jaws close in on me. So I'm running, and then, so the noise is coming up, and I turn, and it's not the hippo, it's Happy. It's the security guard who is running full speed past me, not a guard at all. And so I'm like, okay, well, I guess that's better than a hippo, but thanks, Happy. So we run, and I just keep running, and we don't even stop. I just go right into my hut, and I close the door because it's like, all right, well, we survived this attack. The hippo could still be out there. But what I realized at that moment was that this isn't humans' land. This is the animals, and that we just happen to be living here. And there was no loss in translation between the look that hippo gave me, that I realized that we were party crashers to its private party, and we're the guests and they are the host, and that there is this coexistence of nature and humans that exists here that I was not about to disrupt. And it was a great experience to recognize this and to have all of those run-ins with the animals. And I learned that despite the safari guide saying of whatever you do, don't run. Well, when you see a hippo, run as fast as you can. Thank you.
Give it up for Elliot one more time. And mystery attending parties hosted by hippos. Yeah. Or bring them food. Okay. Come back to the head stories. Translation, please. Linguistic mishaps and new norms are a key aspect of experiences abroad. Tell us yours. When I was in Zimbabwe, kids would see me and point. Mazungu, thanks for the pronunciation, appreciate that. Which translates into white person. One guy I was with didn't know what it meant and said, Muzungu, back. thinking it was a way of saying hello. Cool. This is a story of sensory taste. I once spent a couple of months backpacking through rural western China. I traveled by bus and at each stop bought the same snacks the locals did. Packaged chicken feet. But a month into the trip, I realized I was eating them wrong. Oh no. They would just nibble the edges while I began eating them whole, bone and all. You are adventurous. Okay, our next storyteller, she's a director here at the LSA Academic Advising Center. She was recently awarded a Fulbright Nehru to study higher education at India. Everyone, please welcome Susan Gass, everybody. Susan Gass.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. Full disclaimer, no pits of blood in this story at all. Sorry about that. That was a great story, and all of these stories have been so wonderful. One of the things that you need to know about my story is that right before I left for India in March, I slipped on nasty Michigan ice and broke my wrist. So fortunately, I was still able to go, but I did go with my hand in a cast. I'd never been to India before, so I really wanted to do my research before I went. I was going to be on a Fulbright. I didn't want to look like a dummy. So I read stuff, novels, I read newspapers, did all kinds of research, watched movies, including some great Bollywood movies. And in one of our favorites, there was an Indian heartthrob who would, at the end of every dramatic scene, would pat his heart and say, all is well, which somehow we just thought was hilarious. So off I went to India, well prepared with my Bollywood films. And the first 2 weeks when I was on the Fulbright, we could not have been taken care of in a more fabulous way. We stayed in these 5-star hotels where you would walk in and they would greet you with a garland of jasmine flowers and dot your forehead with gold. They would drape heated towels over your shoulders when you got out of the swimming pool, just in case you might take a chill. And I got special treatment because I had a broken arm. So I had ice packs sent to my room. I had lilies sent to my room. They wouldn't let me walk around the dining room with my own plate. So the service was absolutely impeccable and like nothing I had ever experienced. It wasn't exactly the India I was sort of anticipating from all my reading, and I think that those 2 weeks of this absolute luxury really made my first day by myself in Delhi for my 2-week vacation after my Fulbright just all the more sort of challenging, because being by yourself in Delhi is a really different situation. So my first day, I'm on my own, and I'm thinking I'm pretty good because, hey, I've been in India for 2 weeks, and I have no clue really what's in store for me. So I'm hassled, I'm harassed, I'm dumped out of auto rickshaws, I don't even know where. There are no street signs, so you can't look on a map and see where you are. So I get lost, people try to con me. A rat almost falls on my head right outside of my hotel, which at the time seemed really scary, but now at the moment, you know, really not a hippo, not a dangerous snake, nothing. So it hit me in the head, wouldn't have been that big of a deal really. But at the time, the accumulation of the dirt and the heat and the noise in Delhi and the getting lost made me just think, I've made a terrible mistake. What was I thinking, that 2-week vacation in India would be fun? So I did, when I got back to the hotel, what I should have done in the first place, which was I called Saijan. Saijan was this driver extraordinaire who had been recommended to me by my friend Catherine, and he immediately agreed to drive me for the next 2 days. And the first thing that he said to me when he arrived was, "You are safe with me. You are safe with me." And I was. He was this diminutive, really old Indian man who was a Sikh. He had his hair up in a turban with little white curls coming out. He was very, very sweet and cute. And he was exactly the way Catherine had described him to me. So the next 2 days, he takes me all over Delhi. He walks with me, he takes rickshaws with me, he takes auto rickshaws with me, he takes the metro with me, and he also takes me to his temple. And we not only go through his temple, but we also have lunch there. They serve thousands of meals to the poor every day. And I just felt incredibly lucky and privileged to go around Delhi and see Delhi through this man's eyes. And his English, which was learned only through tourists and other English speakers he drove around, was pretty good considering. And occasionally I wasn't sure exactly what he said, but it was pretty good. We were able to have real conversations. So on that last day, after we'd done our last tourist thing, he asks me if I'd like to have a beer. And I think, yes, what a wonderful idea that we have a beer together at the end. Do we go to a bar? No. We pull into a parking lot, and he gets out, and he says, "Be right back." Okay. Is this cultural? Is this? So he leaves, he's gone for a while, and then he comes back, and he has his arms full. He's got 2 huge cans of warm beer that he hands me in the backseat. I'm in the backseat of the cab. Oh, have I mentioned how incredibly hot it is in this cab that I'm sitting in the parking lot waiting for him? So I'm dying of heat in the cab. He gives me these warm beers. He gets back in the front with an enormous bottle of whiskey and this bag of really coarsely ground, greasy pork sausage. And he starts handing me piece after piece of sausage. You know, eat, drink, drink. So all of a sudden, here I am in India in a parking lot getting drunk in a cab. And I'm thinking, this is not on the list of women's safety tips of going to India. I'm sure of it. This is, or maybe it is on the not to-do list of things to stay safe. And I have to kind of lean forward because he's very soft-spoken and his English isn't all that great. So I'm leaning forward. And it's this big, it's sort of a long banquette, if you can picture. So I'm in the back seat, leaning forward. He's in the front seat, getting absolutely trashed. And it becomes really clear that both Catherine and I have completely misjudged his age. He's not 80. We're sure he's 80, like some little guy, right? No, it turns out he's like 60 years old. He's got children exactly my kid's age. And then he announces that his wife never comes to visit him. She lives in the Punjab, and she's scared of Delhi, so she never comes. And then he reaches across the banquette, and he grabs my hand, my good hand, and he starts kissing my hand, and then kissing my forehead, and inviting me to his apartment and saying, "You are wonderful, you are wonderful." And I think, wait a minute, you're an ancient little Indian guy. So that was definitely lost in translation there. So I used the broken arm excuse, and I say that my arm is very sore, which actually it always was at the end of this hot Indian day. And I say I have to go back to the hotel and rest. So I think, well, that's good. We're gonna go back to the hotel. And then, of course, it hits me that my driver extraordinaire, is completely drunk. And this is Delhi traffic. So what followed is the most frightening car ride of my life, where it's that kind where, you know, your knuckles are like this and you're holding on and your foot is going down like you can control the brake somehow, and you can't actually close your eyes because first you might throw up because of pork sausage and more beer, but also because somehow you have this weird thought that if you can see it coming, maybe you can duck, right? So it's just absolutely terrifying, but we make it to the hotel, we get out, And I'm a little bit shaky, and I'm standing in front of the hotel, and I'm doing my awkward namaste that I can't really do because one arm won't bend. And I'm saying, oh, thank you. No, you, thank you. No, thank you. No, thank you. You are wonderful. No, you are wonderful. No, thank you, thank you. And all I'm thinking inside is, oh, all is well. All is well.
One more time, guys, for Susan, everybody. Terrifying cat rides. Awesome. Well, we're coming towards the end. We have one more speaker left for you guys, one more story, and a few more hat stories. This one is a translation story. Lost and found, I came to U of M and found myself a home. Welcome. This is my home too. This one is a sensory story. And this one is seed. While traveling from a small town to a small town in northern Japan and stopping in various shops, 3 store owners in a row were compelled to question, rather directly, if I was a dude, a man, or a woman. Are you a dude? Oh, you're a man. To be fair, I was with my very tall, bearded friend, but we were quite baffled. I'm quite baffled that he's like, are you a young, hip dude? Are you a man? Okay. One last story, and we'll get into the closing story. This one is lost and found. Have you ever been literally or figuratively lost? One time in Amsterdam, my girlfriend and I shared a marijuana cigarette as the sun went down. Oh, that's beautiful. We had to walk back to the hotel in the dark and high as balls. Interpret what you want. Interpret as you may. I was leading the way and got kind of lost, but luckily my girlfriend didn't notice. Good support. Your girlfriend's a great person supporting you. Alright, one more story. This one is a feel and see of a sensory. I was in Caracas, Peru. My girlfriend and I, maybe the same person, maybe same couple. My girlfriend and I decided to eat lunch at a small place with a fixed menu. Being vegetarian, I ordered patitas with wishful thinking. Potato, right? Yeah, that was my first guess, too. Wrong. Hooves. Oh no. Well, I wonder what kind of hooves. Maybe they're the donkey hooves. They chop them. Okay, bring our last speaker here for tonight in Lost in Translation. He's a graduate student here. He studies urban gardens and insects and hopes to reconnect people to the environment through food. Everybody welcome Naim Edwards, everybody. Naim Edwards.
Good evening. I'm just gonna sit on the floor for all the bold people who gathered around the arch. No, I'm kidding. Ahlan, buenas noches, good evening. My name's Naim. I wanted to give 4 shout-outs. Shout out to love, shout out to sharing, shout out to community, and shout out to storytelling. Okay. So, in the year 2010, I was a Peace Corps volunteer. Shout out to Ecuador as well. I was a Peace Corps volunteer in Ecuador. And I was slowly falling in love with this lovely young lady. She was Peruvian, and she had invited me to spend the Christmas and New Year's Eve holiday with her family, which is kind of like a big deal. Like, you know, you spend 2 holidays with your family. And this wasn't just mom and dad, it was like the sisters, the grandma, and the uncle. And I'm like, awesome, I'll meet you there, because we didn't live together. So I had to travel to Peru, and that's essentially what this story is about. So it should have been as simple as 2 bus rides, one to the capital city of my province, and one to, I lived in El Oro, by the way, in case you might have had it. And then another bus ride to Peru. I tried to call ahead and be proactive, and they said, we don't have the infrastructure for you to buy a ticket online. You have to come into our office to purchase it. So I go there 2 hours early, and they're like, oh, we've sold out all of our tickets. This is the day of the travel, day of the trip. We sold out all our tickets. There's nothing till 11:30 p.m. And I'm like, well, I called ahead, and you guys said I had to come into the office, and now you don't have anything for like the next 9 hours. So I end up in this hot, lovely town with all my bags, waiting for 9 hours for a bus to come. And then a bus finally shows up, and it's full of people. I'm expecting them all to get off since it's the capital city, and a new group to get on. But that's not the case. All of these people stay on the bus, and they expect another 20 people to get on the bus. That's because in Ecuador, the capacity of a bus isn't determined by the number of seats, it's determined by airspace. So if you can fit your child in the overhead, and if you're skinny like me, you're just expected to stand facing somebody the whole time. And then all the undercarriage stuff was full as well, so I had to get on the bus with my bags. And it's Ecuador, so it's a third world country. The bus has no air conditioning, and it's hot, it's right on the equator. And the music's blaring, and there's like sweaty people, and it's 11 o'clock in the evening. So now I'm standing on this bus with all my bags, and we're going down the road. I'm like, I'm a young guy, I can make it through this trip. And it's like a 2.5-hour bus ride standing in this crowded bus with no air. And we get to the stop, which is at the border, and problem 2 arises. At the border, you either get your passport stamped or your visa checked, and the power goes out. And they're like, nobody's getting anything stamped, and nobody's leaving Ecuador till the power's back up. And I'm like, well, how the French open? Like, power might never come back. Like, I've already waited 9 hours at the bus station, and now I have to wait for the power to come back. I'm just gonna get on the bus and go to sleep, because who knows how long this is gonna take. And, you know, I wake up and the bus is moving. It's going south, apparently. And we get to Peru, and it's time to get your entry stamp to Peru. And I give the guy my passport, and he's like flipping through it and looking at me really strange, and he's like flipping through it, and he's like, hey, you never got an exit stamp. And I'm telling him in Spanish, se fue la luz. You know, I just thought I'd get the entry stamp, no biggie, I'm only gonna be here for a couple of days. And he's like, no, I can't give you an entry stamp without an exit stamp. He's like, you're in Peru illegally. I'm like, yeah, no pasa nada, like, I'm only gonna be here like 2 days. And he's like, you have 2 options. You can go to jail, or you can go back to Ecuador. Now, in the meantime, the bus is pulled off to continue onward, and it's taking some of my stuff with it that I left on there. And now I have no way to get to where I was going, and no way to get back to Ecuador. So these 2 mysterious gentlemen pop out of nowhere, and they're like, we can take you back to Ecuador. Mind you, I left Ecuador at 11:30 in the evening, so it's already like 1 a.m. in the morning now, and it's dark, it's like the desert, it's hot and desolate, and I'm like, well, I don't really want to go to jail, I don't know what that's like. I don't want to know what that's like. So I'm like, okay, I'll let you guys take me back to Ecuador. And they're like, it's gonna cost you $80. And I was like, the bus ride from here to there is only 18. You guys are charging me 80 to take me like 40 miles up the road? They're like, yeah. What other options do you have? I'm like, I don't really have. I'm already putting my life in your hands. Like, what's $80? So we get there, and now it's like 3:30 in the morning, and the passport place is closed. It's 3:30 in the morning. Nobody's there, and the lights are out. They're like, don't worry, we know the guys who work here. Give us another $15, we'll call him up, he'll get you the stamp. This guy in a uniform comes, he pulls out a little stamp pad like he keeps in his pocket all the time, and he gives me a stamp. And I'm like, that's it? Like, that's official, like, exit stamp? And they're like, yeah, no pasa nada, everything's good. And they're like, all right, so how you gonna get back to Peru? They're like, we'll take you back for another $80. So now it's 80 plus the 15 for the stamp plus another 80. I've already like tripled the budget of the trip. And I paid them to take me back. And now I'm seeing the same guy who just said, I'm not gonna give you your entry stamp. And now he's looking at me super confused, like, in the last hour you just got an entry stamp. How did that happen? And I'm like, what kind of story can I make up to sound feasible? And I just told him the truth. I'm like, these guys came up to me and they said they would take me back. And then we went back and the guy happened to be there and he gave me a stamp. And now I'm back and I go to Peru now. And he's looking at me and he's like, you know, and you're American. And I'm like, yeah, I'm American. He's like, you're a brown American because you can't be a black American unless your skin is black. And apparently I'm too light skinned. I'm gonna need to get into that story. And I'm like, yeah, I'm an Afro-American. And he's like, African Americans don't travel. Thinking about my time in Ecuador, and I had never seen a black tourist, to be honest. And I was like, that's a fairly legitimate statement. So now he thinks my passport is fake because black Latinos always make up American passports to travel around Latin America. And you know, he's still skeptical about how I got a stamp. So I make up this story, which is apparently a very believable story in Latin America. I say, mi mamá, she's Cuban, my father is Dominican. They immigrated to the States because all Cubans are black and all Dominicans are brown people. And they had this lovely son who happened to speak Spanish because his parents did. And then I came to Ecuador to like help out for, he's like, I knew it, I knew you were an American. And I was like, okay. And he's like, that's all you had to say. And he gives me my entry stamp. So I get my entry stamp and now I'm going, well actually I'm not going anywhere because now it's like 4 a.m. in the morning. And these two guys are gambling the money I just gave them away. And there was this reality show at the time called The Victim, La Victima, which was a show about bad things that happen to good people. And these guys were singing like the theme song to me. Tú eres la víctima, tú eres la víctima. Thank you. And they're like, so how are you gonna get to your destination in Peru? I'm like, man, I don't know. They're like, if you give us, golly, $15, we'll help you get on the next bus. And then the next bus comes up and they're like pointing and laughing at this American guy who like is clearly $200 poorer than he was 5 hours ago. And they give the bus driver my money or split it or something, and I get on that bus and I'm thinking, well, how in the world am I gonna meet Jessica, who was the woman this whole story kind of centered around in the first place? I'm like 5 hours behind the time she was supposed to meet me, and I'm like, her family probably just forgot about me. They're like, he's clearly not coming. And we get to the destination, and before I even get off the bus, I see her like waiting there on the sidewalk for me. And that's the story in a nutshell.
One more time, guys. Give it a round. Good night, everybody. And give it a round of applause for everyone who's spoken here tonight. Those are all wonderful stories. Wonderful time. Thank everyone for coming out. Thank Ruse Rose for supplying the coffee. Thank the International Center for putting the sign word of mouth. Thank this lovely abstract room. I'm going to study here now. I watch a movie. And many people can watch movies. Have a safe trip home, wherever that may be. Okay.